Sorry about that. I was just practicing my. I have a date later, so. But all right. Hello, everybody. Nice to talk to you again. I must say, I was a little nervous this last week. For a moment, I actually thought I might not know what I wanted to talk about for this show, but that concern was alleviated quickly. It was very short lived because No Limit Texas Hold'em truly is unlimited. You know, not just to how much you can bet when it's your turn to do so. And that, of course, is assuming you are aware when it's your turn. And that is actually a rather hefty-sized assumption for a lot of players. But that aside, the game is also truly unlimited in revealing all the varying jerk-off ways people insist on behaving like. So today we're going to go through some stories and some exceptionally tilting hand histories. I don't anticipate getting especially in-depth with them, but we'll just see what rolls off my tongue today. So let's start with what happened on Valentine's Day this past Friday night. I show up, and my first table was pretty boring, so I changed tables, and my new game was a lot better. There were still some really nitty players, but that's pretty much always the case. But we did have one major catalyst at the table. Now, this man, I go back and forth between liking and detesting him. So for now, let's just call my opinion on him neutral. He's a white guy. He's in his 50s. He's from Boston, so he has that stupid accent, although it's not especially thick. He's a recreational player. He's retired. He never stops talking, although he's not rude to anybody. He's friendly. But it's also just kind of funny how every time I've sat with this guy, he finds a way to steer the conversation in the direction of how many kids he has, how successful they are, how many houses he owns and where they're located, and how he used to crush roulette consistently for like a couple of decades, which is, of course, not believable, but it's also not a discussion I really feel like pursuing. Now, as far as his skill level goes, I mean, I think if this guy tried his absolute hardest to play poker well, he could probably play somewhat respectably, but he doesn't care. And as much as anything else, he seems to pride himself on the fact that he can give as much action as he wants with whatever trash hands he feels like playing because this money doesn't mean anything to him. It's almost like, he doesn't want to try to play well because that could present the image that he cares about the money, and he seems very concerned with making sure everyone understands that he doesn't care about the money. Because he's always trying to get someone to do a flip with him for like $500 or the whole table to do it for $200. And then he'll add after that if if he wins, he will give half the profit to the dealer. And that is true because I've seen him do it. Last year, I saw him tip the dealer $300 after winning a flip in which he made $600 in the hand. So I actually do think he's like a sincere man. I mean, he's probably a good father and a good family man, and I think he's just very proud of what he's done. But to go with his sincerity, he seems just as committed in getting people to recognize that he's rich. And I think it's just more important to him that people know he's willing to do flips for hundreds of dollars at a time than actually doing it. Because he never really complains if nobody wants to do it. He's just showing off. So when I sit down, I see he only has about $500 or $600 in front of him. And the first thing he says to me, because we've played a bunch of times, he says something like, "Oh, you missed your chance. I'm almost out of money." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled. And then he lost a few more hands, and then he made a comment about how he's never beaten me in a pot before for anything significant. And, okay, if he's insisting that's the case, then I'll just take his word for it. But I didn't respond to that comment either because I was just thinking, well, guy, I mean, look at the hands you play. Like, do you think maybe that has something to do with why you've been losing to me? But, okay. Now things got exciting because he was under the gun and he goes all in the dark for $300.
Ooh.
We were six-handed. I had the next action and hey, look what I got. King Jack of Diamonds.
Ah.
Now this is a tricky decision because, I know I'm going to spin the wheel with this hand. The question is, do I jam or just call? Now, I'm not someone who studies solvers and, looks up and down at all the charts. I think that information can be extremely useful if you apply it correctly. But I just have problems learning that way. I mean, just from looking at the charts, it just looks like a foreign language. And even though I've, never even tried to actually see if I can learn from it, something just tells me that it's just not going to be worth it for me, and I'm not going to get anywhere worth talking about. But that aside, I mean, solvers or not, here's the sickest thing about live poker, because it doesn't matter how much solver or lab work you might have done or any other time you've put into trying to get better, however you chose to do it. None of that prepares you for situations like this. I got 4 players behind me, and they're all deep, but none of them are big action. So I don't expect any of them to take, any big chances with medium hands in a spot like this one. Now, since our friend is all in for $300 and we're about $1,500 effective with everyone else, we all essentially have 5 big blinds, and my hand is pretty strong. So I think there is an argument to just jam, but I just called. Now, I'd sure hate to have someone jam behind me. Now I have to fold after putting $300 in for no fucking reason, but I would much rather do that than be all in against aces, kings, queens, or some other monster hand. The other reason I called is I think that looks quite strong itself. I mean, if I got 4 guys behind me, if they have like 10s or jacks or even ace king suited, I'm not convinced that they were going to put money in for fear of not just what I might have, but just for the variance of being in this very wonky situation. Now, I might be wrong. And when you suddenly find yourself in a spot like this, you're just trying to use your best discretion in the moment. And mine told me you don't have to give these guys a free roll by going all in, because the hands you're trying to make fold by jamming are very likely to fold to the $300 anyway, now that they've seen me call. So, all right, so I called and everyone else folded. Okay, the hard part's over. Now I just have to beat a random hand. And the first thing he says is, do you want to flip? And I said, okay. And, well, we didn't actually flip, but he showed me his 2 cards before looking at them himself. And he was in the 8 seat, so he's next to the dealer, and I was in the 2 seat. Now, he only flashed me his cards for a moment, and they were overlapping each other, plus the dealer was kind of in my way. So I didn't get a good look at what his cards were, but I thought I did, and I thought I saw that he had 6 deuce offsuit, and I said, I have a better hand than you. I have king jack of diamonds. And then I told him, you got 6 deuce offsuit. And then I think the board ran 8, 8, deuce, ace, 10. I remember every card except the river. The important part is my hand didn't improve, and now I've just lost to 6 deuce on a blind all in. So I told him he won. And then he turns over the winner, which was ace 5 offsuit. Okay, so not only did I not see either of his cards correctly, he was lucky enough to also have me beat before the flop and then have me drawing dead before the river on top of it. So I kind of lost twice, because I would have lost to the hand I thought he had, but instead I lost to the hand that he did have. And the funny thing is, the whole table thought I was just fucking with him when I told him he has 6 deuce offsuit, but I wasn't. I just made a mistake. But either way, I'm just glad the hand I thought he had, it did improve to a better one, because if the hand I thought he had, 6 deuce offsuit, if it didn't improve in any way, and I thought that I had won with king high, and then I find out he has ace high or a pair of aces, whatever, I'd have been so tilted seeing him turn over that hand, because I would have thought I won. Now I find out I lost. So, all right, I mean, that outcome was pretty annoying, but then I said to him, hey, you finally won a hand against me. You happy now? So, okay, on we go. Now he's got $600 again, and he's still in the process of trying to give it away. He is literally trying to just get his stack in, lose, so he can leave. He wanted to go home. And a lot of people reach this point where, for some reason, they're not satisfied with leaving while still having a few $100. They either want to go broke or run their stack to the moon or get even or whatever, and that's where this guy was at too. So he keeps playing, and he's losing little bits at a time again, sometimes to me, sometimes to others. Now it's his button, and it's my small blind. It folds over to him, and he goes all in the dark again. Now, I didn't see for sure this time if he had looked at his hand or not, but he affirmed that he hadn't, and I believed him because I felt for a while that this guy is not, someone who lacks integrity. And this time the all-in was only $265, and I got King 10 offsuit in the small blind. Slightly worse hand, but much easier to go with since there's only one player behind me instead of four. Now, there's probably a good argument for just re-raising to the minimum, which if I did would have made a total bet of $525, but I didn't do that. I just called again, and the big blind folded. This time we didn't flip the cards, and the board ran out. I think it was 7 deuce 4 jack 10. No flushes, no possible flushes. So I've got second pair, and I'm loving my chances now. And then, he does the dramatic show of first, peeling one card very slowly, and he shows a 4. All right, so now he's got a pair. But I tell him I can beat that, so you need something else to go with it. And then he does the drama again, this time looking at the card himself. And he says 2 pair, and he shows a jack.
Fuck!
He had jack 4 offsuit, so this time I did have him beat before the flop like you'd expect. But once again, even though I didn't know it at the time, he had me drawing dead after the turn. So now he's 2 for 2. These are the only 2 times he went all in dark. Both times he got called. Both times it was by me. Both times he won. And both times I didn't even have a sweat for the river, whether I knew it or not. The first time I thought I did have a sweat, but I didn't. Now, I didn't say anything like, mean or bitchy. I mean, he's allowed to win, but this is pretty sick. The guy is trying to lose, and now the deck won't let him. So, okay, on we go again. I'm tilted, not tilted, but I'm just annoyed because how could I not be? But, this is what the guy wants. I mean, this is what he loves to see and why he shows up to play. I mean, he loves standing out by throwing himself in harm's way, going all in dark, so that he can get to see others get distressed and trying to make a decision while he, triumphantly sits on his throne, cackling away. Ha 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 ha. This money means nothing to me and everything to you. And then, of course, the best part on top of it, just being a luck box. But whatever, game on. He and I would play a bunch of pots together, some I won, some he won. And I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of what he was doing. He was trying to sell this image that he's just going to bluff his money off with some airball because of all the dark shoving he'd been doing. But he wasn't going to do that at all. I think he was just going to, keep playing a huge range of hands, be all over the place. And if he caught something, he was going to just get it in if he thought there was some chance that he was ahead. So now comes a hand where he raises to 15. He hadn't done a ton of raising. I mean, only here and there. He was doing a lot of limp calling, a little bit of limp raising. For the most part, he's just clicking buttons all over the place. But anyway, so he makes a 15. I have 7s, and I make it 50. And if he jams, I'm calling. He wasn't super shallow anymore, but he still only had about 600 when the hand started. Just like when I had first showed up to the table. So he calls the 50, and the flop comes 2, 3, 4 rainbow. And this was exactly the type of spot I was hoping to get myself in, to the letter. So he checks, and, we know he's going to have a lot of check folds here, no matter what size I use. But if he has any piece of this flop, we know he's not folding. So I overbet the flop 150 into 100 to try and make him think that all I have is a big ace with, 2 overs and a wheel draw. So that if he has, a hand like 6-3 or 6-4 or king 5, queen 5, whatever, 5 deuce, 5-3, any 4, any pair, actually, or just any of the million fucking hands that do have some interaction with this flop, but that are still losing to an overpair, he's going to at least call the 150, and he probably just jammed. Well, he went with the ladder. He jammed for another 400, a pot size raise. I snap call, thinking that this is what I want. And then he shows me the 6-5 offsuit. Flops the nuts and has me drawing almost dead. And then I was dead after the turn for the 3rd time in about an hour, doubling him up again. Only this time he looked at his hand first. So now he's got $1,200 in front of him, and he instantly left. I mean, it was just crazy. Just, he didn't flop a set where I have 2 outs at least. He didn't, or I could go 5-6 to make it straight. He didn't flop 2 pair where I can, counter front him with another 2 pair. No, he just has a straight. He just has these stone fucking nuts where I have as small a chance as possible at winning. But so it goes. Now, when he left, he didn't say anything to me. He knows this is aggravating, so he's not going to needle me. I've never seen him act that way. And I didn't say anything to him because, yes, this is annoying, but he's allowed to hit and run. He can brag all day long about how little this money means to him, but at the end of the day, it's still his money. And if he wants to leave, then he doesn't owe me anything. And you never owe anyone anything either. And I know sometimes, people feel bad about hitting and running to the point where they may not even do it for fear of, being antagonized. But you know something? Just wait until you get cold decked and lose a huge pot right after you had the thought that you'd like to leave, but you didn't because your ego was concerned that, people might say some shit about you or to you, thinking that you're being inconsiderate. But this is poker, people. I mean, it's money and it's brutal, and I don't expect anyone to show up for anybody else's best interest or well-being besides their own. So if they want to leave right after winning a big one, then I'm not going to say anything to them because, if for no better reason, you have no idea what their life is like. You have no idea what that money means to them. Maybe they never should have been playing at all. Maybe they're gambling money they really can't afford to lose, but then they get really lucky and win a huge pot, and now they can pay their alimony or pay their child support, and it's just who is anybody to tell them that they have to stay and keep playing? One night, I was playing 25-50 at the Bellagio. I was 23. I had just moved to Vegas, so I'd only, been in town for a couple of months. I bought in with $5,000. I think I had about $6,300 when this hand started, and I was under the gun, and I'd already made up my mind that this was my last hand, but whenever it's my last hand, I don't ever give any indication that it is going to be my last hand. I don't grab racks because I don't want to risk leveling myself in some kind of way that people know it's my last hand, and then I might think, oh, are they bluffing me because they think I don't want to play a big pot now? So I just don't give any sort of indication that I'm leaving. So anyway, to make a long story short, I have aces under the gun. It's my last hand, and I played this one the old-fashioned way. I limp raised, got it all in, and I won. So I double up on my last hand in what, to that point, was probably one of the biggest pots I'd ever won. Maybe it was the biggest at the time. But now I'm about to hit and run, and I know this might piss some people off, but it doesn't matter. I'm not sitting here and taking another hand with now over 12,000 in front of me just to make sure a few people I've never met don't think ill of me. I don't want to play this deep, so I'm leaving. So I said to the table, kind of embarrassed, kind of laughing. I was like, guys, I was planning on this to be my last hand. I didn't owe the table an explanation, but I was young and new to Vegas, so, I didn't feel comfortable with just bolting. And then, of course, one of the younger regs makes some obnoxious comment when he says, are you serious? It's my job to just, sit back and lose back the money I just won. But, then another reg, one of the more respected guys at the Bellagio, at least at the time, just looked at me and he just said, look, it's okay, just go. Making it clear that I didn't have to explain myself, but I couldn't help it. I still felt bad. And when I came back the next day, I saw the guy who I'd won that hand against with the aces, and I said to him, I swear, I wasn't hitting and running. I really was planning to leave after that hand. And he's like, it's fine. He's like, you'd made a decision to leave the game, so that's it. So it was nice to get some support from this, because even though I know what I'm doing is not even remotely unethical, I'll admit I was worried people would think that I'm just being some chump, and I'll admit as well that it was frustrating that when I doubled up this guy who literally cannot even give his money away 3 times in an hour. Yeah, I was frustrated he's leaving, but it doesn't matter. Because I'm not going to sacrifice my own integrity to try and make someone feel bad for exercising a right that is completely his. So, if you ever win a big pot and then you want to leave because you don't want to play that deep or whatever the fucking reason is, just leave, and fuck whatever the table thinks because you don't owe them anything. You know, there have been a few times I played in a home game where they told us you have to give the table a notice of 30 minutes before you leave. And, you know, that's to discourage people from hitting and running. And okay, fine. It's a home game. It's invite only. These are house rules. So whatever, fine. But the whole rule becomes pointless because everyone, the moment they won a big pot, said, okay, guys, this is my half-hour notice. And 5 hours later, they're still there. And they didn't change their mind. They're just covering their ass by immediately giving the half-hour notice as soon as they won big so that they can leave, not literally whenever they want, but anytime after 30 minutes has passed. So I think for this rule to actually make sense, I would say if you give your 30 minutes notice of leaving, then you have to leave the game. You know, maybe not within exactly 30 minutes, but how about an hour? Because if you can give just your half-hour notice and then stay all night, I think the whole purpose of this courtesy is now defeated. Anyway, so the main attraction is left, and now I'm losing. I'm pretty irritated, but okay, life could be worse. Some people don't have legs. But now comes a hand where it folds over to me. I got ace-jack offsuit on the button. I raise to 20, and the small blind calls, and we go heads up. The flop comes 10-deuce-5 rainbow, and he check calls 30. I know this size is probably a little bigger than necessary, but I was planning to barrel off on a fair number of runouts, so I kind of wanted to build the pot up and essentially get value from the bluff. But all that changed when the turn came in ace, and he checked again, so now I'm worried he's going to fold if I bet again, so I check back, and the river is another ace. Okay. So the small blind is thinking for a little bit, and then he bets 40. And I figured he probably has a 10 pretty often. I didn't think of it for some reason, but I suppose he could have had an ace too. I mean, if he did, you would think it's probably going to be ace 3 or ace 4 since those hands flop the wheel draw. But in any event, I pretty much have the nuts here, so I raise to 155. And as soon as I do that, he immediately makes this sound expressing what pain he's now in. So he's thinking and he's thinking. He's agonizing. And now at this point I'm worried my size may have been a little too big because it really, really, really sucks when you're value betting and the guy is thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and folds. That sucks. But he's counting out the chips. Looks like he's going to call now, and this is just a beautiful thing, just that's it, just roping him in. Come on down. Yeah, there he goes. He's calling. I turn over the ace-jack, and he turns over ace-king. What the fuck? And it was in this moment that I realized that of all the things that people do that enrage me day in and day out playing poker, out of all the incoherent, senseless things they say, and all the petty self-righteous entitlements they have, and all the criticisms they have of how people behave after they've done absolutely nothing wrong, and all the whiny, pathetic complaints they make when they lose after playing like a fucking moron, nothing pisses me off more than this. It's the fucking nit-rolling. Oh my fucking God. You did not just take forever and a day to call with that hand. You did not just genuinely agonize for probably at least a minute, knowing full goddamn well there's absolutely no way you're folding that hand in this pot, which didn't even come that close to hitting 100 big blinds between the two of us. This wasn't about him thinking about re-raising. No, he was actually living in some type of world where he thought he may need to fold. Even though, in actuality, he'd sooner chop off his mother's head with an axe before doing that. He hems and haws, and he puts on this whole show. Oh no, what do I do? I just got raised $115 on the river on a board of 10-deuce-5 ace-ace, no possible flush, and all I have is this measly ace-king. And I'm not even going to get into the fact that his choosing to flat ace-king from the small blind and not 3-bet after the button has opened after everyone has already folded to the button is nothing short of a crime. I'm not even going to touch on the fact that he chose to call in a spot where he has the most automatic free bet imaginable. Now, I've said a few times already in other shows that poker is a gentleman's game in which you must respect everyone, and I stand by that. But you know something? This was too much now. Between getting fucked 3 times in an hour by a guy who literally could not give his money away, twice beating me by going all in dark, and now this fucking shit? No. Now, I didn't go crazy, but I said to the guy, pretty, kind of aggravated. I mean, I was like, what were you afraid of? Tell me, enlighten me, because I'm the stupid one, clearly, for raising with the worst hand. And he laughs, and he says, I thought you could have pocket 5s. Pocket 5s. Okay. So this person decided that there was a high probability that I flopped a set of 5s, not deuces or 10s, just 5s, and then checked back the turn after an ace came. But he also decided that there's a very low probability that maybe I had just bet the flop with ace high, checked back after turning top pair, and then raised after I made trips on the fucking river. So he thinks I'm likely to be checking the super monster hand on the turn, but that I am not likely to be checking the weaker hand with just top pair. This is when poker, it just becomes torture. When you're already getting fucked left and right by a whale, and then you catch a strong hand against someone else, only to find out that they had you beat the entire time and are cock-teasing you, pretending that there's actually a chance they fold. But we all know what it is. He's just trying to save face in case the 0.03% chance they're actually beat shows up. They're just trying to show how smart they were for at least thinking about the situation before finally just putting the goddamn fucking money in like they knew they were going to the whole time. Holy shit! But that was just the beginning, because let me give you another tale of nit rolling, because if you thought that one was bad, you might need a sip of water before you hear this one. Or a shot of whiskey or something. Maybe some what is it? Absinthe, that really strong stuff, that green liquor tastes like, whatever, fuck it. Okay, so it's the next day. We're back at the Wynn. Or not we, I'm back at the Wynn. I'm only one person. And there's this young Asian woman who had just joined the game. She seemed very sweet and very fishy. Now, I said she was young, but for all I know, she was 100, because I don't know how they do it, but Asian people, they age so slowly. They all seem to be at least 10 years older than they look. But whatever. It's not that important. So she's got close to $500 when this hand starts. And she limped in, I think, from the hijack or somewhere in the middle position. I got queens in the small blind. And I raised to 30, and she calls. And the flop is 7-5-4, 2 spades, and I have a spade. And this seems like a flop that definitely could hit her pretty often. And, even though much of the 2-5 field will check back hands they call with, I still thought this would be a pretty good spot to check. So I do that, and she bets 25. Okay. So far, so good. I am 100% sure queens is still the best hand, as I expected her to bet a lot bigger with anything that can beat one pair here. So I raised to 120, expecting her to have a lot of hands that will want to see the next card, and she calls. And the turn card is perfect. It's a 10, no spade. So she's got about a pot-sized bet remaining, maybe a little more. And she could have a range of hands with anywhere from, 5 outs to 13 or 14, so I'm just going to put her all in. So I jam, and now she's thinking, and she's thinking. She's sighing. She looks upset, and she's rolling her eyes. A slight eye roll as she throws in a chip to signal she's calling, and then she asks, "Do you have a straight?" Which is obviously not something I was wanting to hear, and certainly not expecting to hear. I said, "What?" And before I could even finish asking her, I need a straight, she'd already turned over the 6-3 of hearts. So all she did was flop the second nut straight. She has a pot-sized bet left on the turn after calling the flop check raise, and I'm of course stunned she didn't just re-raise all in on the flop. And then she is legitimately tanking on the turn, and she wasn't being an asshole. When she called all in, she threw in that chip like she thought she was drawing dead. And you know what the best part is? These are the same people who get 300 big blinds in post-flop with aces against some 75-year-old man who hasn't played a hand since his open heart surgery, and then they throw their arms in total disbelief when he turns over a set! I mean, it is just so unfucking real what we see sometimes. I wanted to break something when she turned that over. I was so fucking flabbergasted, and I am again now, as you can see, just thinking about it. I was so overwhelmed and stunned with aggravation that there was just nothing I could even do to adequately express it, and that just made it even more aggravating. So now I'm more aggravated by the fact that I can't express my aggravation than what I was originally aggravated by. And I don't even care that I lost. I don't care that I had another big hand cracked by someone spewing from every direction by flopping yet another straight. And I especially don't care that the pot, wasn't that big. It's just the goddamn principle of what I just saw, because I have never seen a nit roll worse than that one. And I've seen a lot of bad ones. A lot of bad ones. I've seen people him and ha and put on the whole show and tank call with sets on boards where no draw was completed. And there's just not a chance in hell they're ever folding. I've seen them do it with huge flushes on unpaired boards. I just seen one after another. The absolute, utter, jaw-dropping waste of time made by these fucking people who actually thought that they, should mull this decision over, even though they already know there is not a chance in heaven, hell, or earth that they ever fold. And when I saw her hand, I just stood up and looked at her cards and looked at her and then pointed at her tabled cards and said, yeah, you got it. That hand wins. Do I have a straight? You got the fucking nuts, honey. What the fuck are you waiting for? What the fuck are you actually thinking about? I couldn't stop myself after that. I couldn't help it. I was so tilted. I didn't go batshit, but I said to her, and she's of course all happy and giddy now, after making this hero call, I said to her, tough call with that hand. It's like you knew. Do I have a straight? I'll say it again. I mean, look, yeah, poker's a gentleman's game, but you know something? If someone is going to take that much time with that hand and call their stack off so sheepishly, like they're feeling sorry for themselves, that they feel the need to go with this hand, they kind of deserve to take some shit for it. Because it wasn't like she thought about it for even 2 seconds. No, I'm not kidding. She took a while. So I figured she's just debating, does she want to call it off and gamble with a pair and a flush draw or a pair and a straight draw? Something like that. No. Here I am thinking, I'll probably win this pot one way or another, but no. She just has a straight in a spot where it's next to impossible for me to have her beat. But that still wasn't good enough for her to just put the money in right away. I mean, sometimes God, it's just like God. How good does your hand need to be for you to feel confident in it? Well, I guess in this case, and the case with the guy who had the ace-king, anything short of the absolute stone, linear nuts, isn't good enough to snap call. So it never crossed her mind that she can beat about, 400,000 different value hands or semi-bluffs. All she thought about was the 1 in a zillion chance I turn over 8-6, but ultimately decided, okay, I guess I'll just go home. All I have is the second nuts in a spot where it's there's a better chance of you dying in the next 5 minutes than you turning over 8-6 here. I mean, oh my God. Oh my God. But you know something? It all goes hand in hand, because there's something to be said about the speed it takes a person to make a decision. suppose someone bets really big on the river and he's bluffing. And suppose he gets like 10 called after like 3 minutes, by second pair. That is not the same thing as getting snap called. I mean, the result is the same, the money's the same, but the guy who snap called made a much more impressive call, and I think tells you a little bit more about the guy, at least in that spot, because he solved the puzzle that much quicker. So when you're playing against losing players who have now obviously had too long of a history of getting slaughtered at this game as a result of having no idea what they're doing, then yeah, I guess, sooner or later that they're even going to be a deer in the headlights in a spot like this one. And it's because they're just as clueless now as they were in all the other spots they stacked off in where they probably should not have. And this time, not realize that they have to go broke with this hand and not worry about it if that's what it comes to. But it still all comes down to what I said before. She's not going to fold that hand. She knows she's not going to fold that hand. So just put the fucking money in. Why are you trying to save face? What is that going to give you? Now look, I mean, I just started to allude to it. I recognize that poker for losing players is a far different experience than from winning players. And I don't care what anyone says about how little they care about the money and how they only play for entertainment. Nobody likes losing. Nobody likes getting their ass kicked. And eventually, so many people who keep coming back have taken so many shellackings that it even causes them to do shit like this. How many times they put piles in with something they figured they couldn't lose with, only to find out they did, and it's like scarred them so badly that now, even when they're in situations like this, they still sit there sulking because all they did this time was flop the second nut straight in a spot where there's not only almost no chance I flopped a higher straight, but I can just have a value hand that she's ahead of anyway! So after that, I had enough. The game was boring. Been running like dog shit. So I wanted a change of environment since I'd been playing not even 3 hours, but still had plenty left in the tank. So I walk over to the Venetian and I played the 3-5, which has a $1,200 max. I stayed about 3.5 hours and I ended up coming back most of the way for the night. I didn't make any big hands. I just ran over some people about 2 or 3 times in hefty pots, since most people's so-called strategy is sit there and wait for the nuts all fucking day and just fold until they get it. It's not really much of a strategy when you think about it. It's not really playing poker in the true sense of the word, when you zoom out a little bit and see what this is, but whatever. Before any of this Venetian session happened, as soon as I sat down, I saw this other reg was table changing, and he's a guy I've seen at the Wynn too, but I usually see him at the Venetian. But as he's leaving, I think someone asked him, "Are you table changing?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "This game is awful." And this is another thing that really fucking incites me, okay? Why was that comment necessary? He can't just fucking table change and go to another game and say, "Okay, bye guys," or, he doesn't have to say anything if he doesn't want to, but he can't just leave the game. He has to let us all know, "Oh yeah, this game sucks." He's insulting us. I mean, we've all sat in bad games plenty of times, and it's expected to happen, especially in Vegas, where there's a lot of pros and wannabes. And look, I don't enjoy a bad game any more than the next guy. But if I'm not happy with the game, I just tell the floor I want a table change, and that's it. I'm not going to demean the whole table like I'm this entitled prince who has every right to assume that every time he walks into the poker room that there's just going to be this marching band of whales parading around, banging the drum, all lining up one by one, getting on both knees, not only to suck my dick, but to beg me to take their money, begging me to go all in with them when they have 7 deuce and I got aces every fucking hand. And every time this happens, have you noticed it always comes from one of 2 different types of people? It's either some obnoxious jerk-off who is giving a lot of action, but can't just do so and keep their mouth shut. No, they have to make a spectacle of themselves. They have to act like a 6th grader and arrogantly demean everybody else, and sincerely believes that he's cooler than you are, and he's a better person than you are. He's better for the game than you are, and he's just above you because He's making minus E because he's making minus EV decisions every chance he gets. It's either that type or the one who just put the entire table down now. And that is either, a pro or a part-time pro who is a total nit and is every bit as guilty of what he just demeaned the whole table for. And these are the same players who, roll their eyes like there's something wrong with you if, say, you overbet into a $20 pot. It's really amazing. So you have the right to lambaste the table for not going all in with nothing every hand so that, they can just line your pockets no problem. But at the same time, you have a problem with someone fighting over a small pot because you personally can't be bothered with it. I mean, it's one of the best kept secrets that, and it'll probably always last, that people will never realize that the small pots are important because you play so many of them. And here's another message to all the wannabes and the never will be's who all assumed they would just waltz into Vegas and crush the poker scene with record-setting dominance by doing nothing but waiting for the nuts. If you're dissatisfied with the action of a game on a particular day and you can't find a game that's any better, well, instead of bitching and moaning about why the game isn't good enough for you because they're not stuffing chips into your mouth like you're a stripper, why don't you try getting a little better at poker? Why don't you stop being such a pansy every day and bluff once in a while? And by the way, bluffing when you're on tilt because you're losing, that doesn't count as you trying to play the game and get better. No, that's just you being desperate, and being desperate is not something anybody ever wants to feel. And my goodness, there are so many players. They're everywhere. You can go into any poker room, spit, and hit someone who will never, ever bluff for anything remotely significant until they're losing. And the only reason they're doing it is because plan A, which is nut pedal, isn't working today, so let's go to plan B, play reckless, and hope I get lucky. Yeah, spoken like a true champion. And you want to know why you're fucking barely making a living at this, scraping by, and wondering why you hate the game so much. I really hate to be like the bearer of such bad news, but there's just a little bit more to poker than stacking fish with a cooler. I mean, I just said this. You play a zillion small, medium pots that add up to an enormous pot. And whether you like it or not, there are huge edges to be had in them. So don't tell me with an attitude, oh, it's only $20, because what happens after you say that 500 times? Is it only $10,000? So many people want to crush poker and have visions and fantasies of doing so. But if you want to actually do it and really put some containments on the variance, then battle! Can you at least try? Can you at least make some sort of effort to win in between the jackpot situations where the deck just sets you up to win and the hands effectively just play themselves? And when that happens, it doesn't even mean anything. I mean, it seems like it does because the pot was big, but when that situation reverses itself, you're just going to lose all that money back. So it blows me away at how many players, even winning players like this little shit, who don't think that the small, medium pots are significant and worth fighting over. It's like what are you, too good to go after a $40 pot when it's clear as day that no one has anything and is even going to make an attempt at winning the hand? It's unbelievable. And it's even more unbelievable as to just how bad so many people are at poker and are still good enough to win. That's how soft the game is. Because nobody is even trying. Some people, they just suck less. And that's why they win. They think they're trying. And they think they can just show up and, not give a shit outside of what 3 hands they choose to play each day. And then they act so surprised when this somehow didn't add up to steamrolling dominance. A little common sense goes a long way in this world. And if you want to be great at something, you have to be willing to do things that no one else is willing to do. And that doesn't mean you do it once and then never do it again. No, I mean you do it day in and day out until it becomes so routine that it feels stupid to not do it. Then you'll at least have a chance at achieving something worth talking about. But no. They'd rather just sit around and lazily criticize you for not making this as easy as humanly possible for them. This is why I love beating the shit out of people so badly at poker so much. This is why it never gets old. Because they're a bunch of fucking pussies who will never figure that out. We'll see you next time.